I walked into my house and called for Emma and Lucas, but only silence answered me. My heart started racing as I moved through each room, finding them all empty. Then I saw it on the kitchen counter, a note in my sister-in-law's handwriting. Diane had enrolled my children in Riverside Academy, a boarding school 3 states away, and they'd left that morning. The note said not to worry, that it was for the best, that I worked too much anyway. My hands trembled as my phone buzzed with her message. "You can't do anything about it. They're registered under my name as guardian." I immediately called my husband Mark, my fingers shaking so badly I almost dropped the phone. He was in Seattle on business, and when he answered, I could barely get the words out. "Mark, where are our children? What did you do?" There was a long pause, then he sighed. "Diane brought me some papers last week. She said they were just emergency contact forms in case something happened while you were traveling for work." Emergency contact forms. My voice rose. "Mark, she took Emma and Lucas to a boarding school in another state. She sent me a message saying they're registered under her name as their guardian." Another pause. "I didn't know she was going to do that. I swear, Justine, I thought it was just paperwork for their school records." I sank into a chair, my legs unable to hold me up anymore. "How could you sign anything without talking to me first?" "They're our children. Diane's been saying for months that you work too much," Mark said quietly. "She made some good points about the kids needing more stability and attention. I've been struggling with our marriage." I thought maybe she was right. Those words felt like a physical blow. My own husband had been listening to his sister's criticism and agreed with her. It'd been working hard, yes, but only because I was rebuilding my career after being laid off 18 months ago. I'd started my own financial consulting business, and it was finally taking off. Every long hour was for our family's future, for Emma's college fund, for the stability we needed. "She's living in our house, Mark. Your sister has been in our home for 6 months, ever since her divorce, and now she's taken our children." "It was supposed to be temporary," he said weakly. I thought back over the past 6 months. Diane had arrived with 2 suitcases, saying she just needed a few weeks to get back on her feet. But weeks turned into months, and Shed settled in like she owned the place. At first, Id tried to be supportive. She was family, she was hurting, and I wanted to help. But then the comments started. Little observations about how I prepared dinner, suggestions about the kids' bedtimes, questions about why I was working late again. Shed pick up Emma and Lucas from school without asking, change their afternoon routines, and contradict the rules I'd set. When I tried to talk to her about boundaries, Shed act hurt and say she was only trying to help. "I need you to fix this," I told Mark. "Call Diane right now and tell her to bring them home." "I can't just demand that," he said. "The papers I signed, they're legal documents. Wed need lawyers." "Then get a lawyer. These are your children, Mark. He'll try to talk to her," he said, but his voice lacked conviction. "Just give it a few days. Maybe this will be good for them. Maybe we all need some space to figure things out." I ended the call, too angry and scared to continue. I immediately dialed Riverside Academy. A pleasant-voiced woman answered, and I explained that I was Emma and Lucas Pierce's mother and I needed to speak with them immediately. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Pierce," the woman said, her tone shifting to something more formal. "We have specific instructions regarding the children. Their legal guardian, Diane Matthews, has requested that all contact go through her first. I'm their mother. I'm their legal guardian. According to our records, Miss Matthews has temporary guardianship. If you'd like to dispute this, you'll need to provide legal documentation. The children are settled in and doing well." Miss Matthews assured us this arrangement was in their best interest. I tried to explain, tried to make her understand, but she remained polite and immovable. "School policy," she kept saying. "Legal guardianship, proper documentation, the children's best interest." I was 5 hours away by car, and my children might as well have been on another planet. After the call ended, I sat alone in my empty house. Emma's backpack usually hung by the door, but it was gone. Lucas' jacket wasn't on its hook. I walked to their rooms and found beds neatly made, favorite stuffed animals missing. Diane had packed for them. Shed planned this carefully. I looked at family photos on the wall. Emma at her 5th birthday party, chocolate cake smeared on her face. Lucas on his first day of kindergarten, missing his 2 front teeth. Mark and me on our wedding day, 10 years ago, so young and hopeful. When had everything started falling apart? The house felt wrong without the sounds of my children. No Emma practicing piano, no Lucas playing with his toy cars, no fighting over the remote or laughing at silly jokes. Just silence, heavy and suffocating. I called my friend Sarah, a paralegal at a family law firm. She answered on the second ring. "Sarah, I need help. Diane took my kids." I barely slept that night at Sarah's apartment. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Emma's face, heard Lucas calling for me. By 4 in the morning, I gave up trying and started packing an overnight bag. Sarah found me in her living room at dawn, already dressed and ready to go. "You're driving there," she said. It wasn't a question. "I have to see them. I have to make sure they're okay. Let me come with you." "No, stay here and start researching guardianship law. I need to know exactly what Mark signed and how we can undo it." The drive to Riverside Academy took 5 hours and 23 minutes. I counted every mile, every minute. The school was in Connecticut, nestled in rolling hills that probably looked beautiful under different circumstances. The campus had historic brick buildings covered in ivy, immaculate lawns, and pathways lined with old oak trees. It looked expensive. It looked permanent. I parked in the visitor lot and walked to the administration building, trying to appear calm and rational despite the panic churning in my stomach. A secretary directed me to Headmaster Gregory Thompson's office on the 2nd floor. Headmaster Thompson was a tall man in his 50s with silver hair and wire-rimmed glasses. His office was lined with leather-bound books and diplomas from prestigious universities. He stood when I entered but didn't offer his hand. "Mrs. Pierce, we've been expecting you might visit. I want to see my children. I understand your distress, but I'm afraid that's not possible without proper authorization. Please, sit down." I remained standing. "I'm their mother. I don't need authorization." He pulled a file folder from his desk and opened it. "Miss Matthews provided us with extensive documentation regarding the family situation. I'm sorry to be blunt, Mrs. Pierce, but she's expressed serious concerns about your ability to care for Emma and Lucas." "That's absurd. What concerns?" He glanced down at the papers. "Substance abuse issues, erratic work schedules, financial instability, and several witness statements from neighbors and teachers." Miss Matthews painted a picture of 2 children in need of stability and structure that they weren't receiving at home. My mouth went dry. "That's not true. None of that is true. There are photographs here, wine bottles in your recycling bins, testimony from people who claim to have witnessed concerning behavior, documentation of your irregular working hours and frequent absences from school events. Those are lies, or twisted versions of normal life. Yes, I have wine bottles in my recycling because I host book club once a month. Yes, I work irregular hours because I run my own consulting business. I attend every school event that I can, but I'm a single income provider right now while my husband travels for his job." Headmaster Thompson's expression remained neutral, but I could see he didn't believe me. Diane had built her case carefully, and Id walked in looking exactly like the hysterical, unstable mother she had described. Then his office door opened, and Diane walked in. She was dressed impeccably in a navy suit, her makeup perfect, her expression one of concerned compassion. She looked at me with what appeared to be genuine sympathy, and I wanted to scream. "Justine, I'm glad you're here," she said softly. "We need to talk about what's best for Emma and Lucas. What's best is for them to come home with me right now." She turned to Headmaster Thompson. "See, this is exactly what I was worried about. She's not thinking clearly. She's not considering what the children actually need. I'm their mother. I know exactly what they need, do you?" Diane's voice remained calm, reasonable. "When was the last time you had dinner with them? When was the last time you helped with homework or tucked them into bed? I do those things. Maybe not every single night because I'm working to support our family, but I'm there for them." "You're building a career," Diane said. "I understand that. But children need consistency. They need someone present, not someone who's always traveling or locked in a home office or stressed about clients. I'm offering them stability. This school offers them structure and excellent education. Why are you fighting what's clearly in their best interest? Headmaster Thompson nodded slightly, and I realized he was completely on her side. Shed poisoned this well before it ever arrived. This is kidnapping, I said, my voice breaking. You can't just take someone's children. I have legal guardianship, Diane replied. Mark signed the papers willingly. And honestly, Justine, if you loved them as much as you claim, you'd want what's best for them instead of what's convenient for you. That struck deep. She knew exactly where to aim to cause maximum damage. Before I could respond, Headmaster Thompson pressed a button on his phone. Security, please come to my office. That's not necessary, I said quickly. I just want to see my children. Let me talk to them for 5 minutes. Please. I'm afraid I can't allow that. Miss, Matthews has made it clear that contact with you at this time would be disruptive to their adjustment period. Now, I'm going to have to ask you to leave campus. 2 security guards appeared in the doorway, both large men in uniform. They didn't touch me, but their presence was clear. Diane put her hand on my arm. Go home, Justine. Get yourself together. Maybe in a few months, when you're in a better place, we can talk about visitation. I jerked my arm away from her touch. As the security guards escorted me down the hallway, I looked out a window and saw children in uniforms walking between buildings. And there they were. Emma in a navy skirt and white blouse, her dark hair in braids I hadn't made. Lucas in khaki pants and a polo shirt, his shoulders hunched. Emma, I called out, pressing against the window. She looked up, and her face crumpled. She started running toward the building, but a teacher caught her arm. I watched my daughter struggle, reaching for me, crying, and I couldn't get to her. Lucas saw what was happening and started crying too. Mom, you need to leave now, one of the security guards said firmly. They escorted me all the way to my car and watched as I drove away. In my rearview mirror, I could see Riverside Academy growing smaller, and somewhere in those buildings were my children, thinking I'd abandoned them. I made it 2 miles before I had to pull over. I sat in a gas station parking lot and sobbed until my throat was raw and my eyes were swollen. Then I called Sarah. She planned everything, I told her. She has fake evidence, fake witnesses. The school thinks I'm an unfit mother. They won't let me near Emma and Lucas. The guardianship papers, Mark signed. Sarah said carefully. I looked into them. They're valid for 90 days from the signing date. Fighting them in court would take months and cost tens of thousands of dollars you don't have right now. And Diane could argue that removing the kids from school mid-term would be disruptive, so I just let her keep them. I didn't say that. I'm saying the legal route is going to be slow and expensive. We need to be strategic. But I didn't feel strategic. I felt broken. The drive home was a blur of tears and rage. I replayed every conversation with Diane over the past 6 months, seeing now how she'd been planning this. Every criticism, every offer to help with the kids, every time she'd undermined my parenting, it had all been building to this moment. When I pulled into my driveway just after sunset, I immediately knew something was wrong. The porch light wasn't on, even though I always left it on when I was away. I walked to the front door and tried my key. It didn't work. She'd changed the locks. I tried again, thinking maybe I was using the wrong key in my exhausted state. But no, the lock had definitely been changed. And then I saw them. My belongings, boxes and suitcases lined up neatly on the porch. My clothes and personal items packed away like garbage waiting for collection. Several neighbors were outside, pretending to check their mail or water their gardens, but really watching the drama unfold. Mrs. Patterson from next door quickly looked away when I made eye contact. The Robinsons across the street went inside and closed their curtains. I rang the doorbell. My own doorbell. Diane opened the door but stood blocking the entrance. She was wearing one of my cardigans. What are you doing? I asked, my voice surprisingly steady. Making space, she said simply. You need time to work on yourself, and this house needs to be a stable environment. Mark and I agreed that it's better if you stay somewhere else for a while. Mark and you agreed? This is my house too. Actually, it's in Mark's name. You know that. You were still rebuilding your credit when you bought it. She said it pleasantly, like she was discussing the weather. I'm doing this for the children, Justine. They need consistency, and you need to get your priorities straight. My priorities? You kidnapped my children. I saved them from a neglectful situation, she corrected. There's a difference. A car pulled into the driveway. Mark's car. He got out slowly, avoiding my eyes. Mark, tell her to give me my house key. He stood there, hands in his pockets, looking at the ground. Maybe Diane's right. Maybe you do need some time to figure things out. You've been so stressed, so focused on work. When was the last time we had a real conversation? Are you serious right now? Your sister stole our children and you're talking about our marriage. I'm saying, maybe she has a point, he said quietly. Maybe they do need more stability. You're always working late, always on your phone with clients, always planning the next business trip. When did you become so distant? The words hit me like physical blows. But then I understood. This wasn't just about Diane's manipulation. Mark wanted out. Head wanted out for a while, and his sister had given him the perfect excuse. You're having an affair, I said. The certainty came from nowhere and everywhere at once. His guilt, his distance, his willingness to believe the worst about me. That's what this is really about. His face told me everything. He didn't deny it. Who is she? That's not important right now, Diane interjected. What's important is that you're clearly not in a good place mentally. Look at you, making wild accusations, getting hysterical. I'm hysterical because you took my children. See? Diane turned to Mark. This is exactly what I was worried about. She can't have a rational conversation. I looked at my husband, the man I'd loved for 10 years, the father of my children. How long? 3 months, he admitted. Jennifer from my office. I didn't mean for it to happen. Jennifer. I knew her. I'd met her at the company holiday party, and then I remembered that Jennifer and Diane had been college roommates. This wasn't coincidence. Diane had orchestrated this too. Your sister set you up with Jennifer, didn't she? She wanted to break up our marriage. Mark looked confused, but Diane's tiny smirk confirmed it. You wanted my life, I said to Diane. My house, my husband, my children. Why? Because you didn't appreciate any of it, she snapped, her composed mask slipping. You had everything and you took it all for granted. A devoted husband, beautiful children, a lovely home. And what did you do? You ignored them all to play businesswoman. Someone had to step up and be the adult. I was providing for my family. You were being selfish. She straightened her shoulders, the mask back in place. Now, I suggest you collect your things and leave. We can discuss visitation once you've had time to reflect on your choices. I looked at Mark, waiting for him to say something, to defend me, to act like the man I'd married, but he just stood there, guilt and weakness written across his face. You're really going to let her do this? I think some space would be good for everyone, he said quietly. I wanted to scream, to fight, to force my way into my own house, but I could see how it would look. The unstable, hysterical wife making a scene. Diane would probably call the police and add it to her evidence file. As if summoned by my thoughts, a police car pulled up. 2 officers got out, and I recognized one of them from Emma's school safety assembly last year. Evening, folks, the officer said. We got a call about a disturbance. No disturbance, Diane said smoothly. Just a difficult family situation. My sister-in-law is having a hard time accepting some changes, and we wanted to make sure everything stayed peaceful. The officers looked at me, taking in my tear-swollen face, my rumpled clothes from hours of driving, the boxes of my belongings on the porch. I could see them making assumptions, writing the narrative in their heads. Mom, is this your residence? One officer asked me. It's my marital home. Yes, but apparently I've been locked out. The house is in my brother's name, Diane explained. They're going through a separation, and for everyone's safety, we thought it best if she stayed elsewhere for now. I haven't agreed to a separation, I said. And those are my children in those photos inside. My sister-in-law sent them to boarding school without my permission. She has legal guardianship, Mark said quietly. I signed the papers. The officers exchanged glances. This was a civil matter, their expressions said. Not their problem. Mom, I'm going to suggest you collect your belongings and find somewhere else to stay tonight, the first officer said. You can work out the legal issues with lawyers, but causing a scene here isn't going to help anyone. I'm not causing a scene. I'm trying to get into my own house. It's not your house, Diane said. Not legally. The second officer, a woman, stepped closer to me. Her name tag read Rodriguez. She spoke quietly, so only I could hear. This isn't a fight you can win tonight. Trust me, get a good lawyer, document everything. But right now, you need to leave before this gets worse. She pressed a business card into my hand. I looked at my house, at the windows where Emma and Lucas had grown up. I thought about their rooms, their toys, their whole lives inside those walls. And then I looked at Diane, standing in my doorway wearing my sweater, and Mark beside her, too cowardly to even meet my eyes. You'll regret this, I said to both of them. That sounds like a threat, Diane said loudly enough for the officers to hear. See? This is what I've been dealing with. Officer Rodriguez touched my arm. Go now, please. I loaded my belongings into my car, shoving boxes into the trunk and back seat. My neighbors watched from their windows. The officers stood by until I drove away. In my rearview mirror, I saw Diane close my front door, shutting me out of my own life. I drove to Sarah's apartment. She took one look at my face and pulled me inside. I collapsed on her couch and cried until I couldn't cry anymore. I'd lost my children, my home, my marriage, and my dignity all in one day. They took everything, I whispered. How did this happen? Sarah sat with me, holding my hand. She didn't have answers, because there weren't any that made sense. Sometimes people you trust betray you in ways you never saw coming. Sometimes life falls apart faster than you can hold it together. I spent that night on Sarah's couch, staring at the ceiling. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Emma reaching for me through that window, Lucas crying. I'd failed them. I'd let Diane take them, and I had no idea how to get them back. The next morning, I couldn't get out of bed. Sarah called in sick to work and sat with me. I couldn't eat. I couldn't think. I just kept replaying everything, looking for the moment where I could have stopped this, where I could have seen it coming. She planned this for months, Sarah said. Maybe longer. You couldn't have known. I should have known. I should have protected them. You will protect them. But first you need to think clearly. We need a strategy. But how could I think clearly when my children were 5 hours away? Probably wondering why their mother had abandoned them. How could I be strategic when I had no money for lawyers, no home, no leverage? For 3 days, I barely functioned. Sarah forced me to shower and eat, but I moved through her apartment like a ghost. I called Emma and Lucas' school phone numbers dozens of times, but they were always unavailable or in class. I knew Diane had instructed them to block my calls. On the 4th morning, Sarah shook me awake. Get up. We're going through your documents today. Every paper, every file, every record. If we're going to fight this, we need to know exactly what we're working with. What's the point? Mark signed legal papers. Diane has the kids. The school believes her lies. I have nothing. You have the truth. And sometimes that's enough. Get up, Justine. Your kids are counting on you. That got me moving. For Emma and Lucas, I could find the strength to get up, to fight, to keep going even when everything felt hopeless. We went to my bank's safe deposit box that afternoon. Sarah drove because I still felt too shaky to trust myself behind the wheel. Inside the box were our important documents: birth certificates, social security cards, insurance policies, and my grandmother's papers. I'd almost forgotten about grandmother Margaret. She'd died 12 years ago, when I was 23, and I'd been devastated. She'd been my favorite person in the world, the one who encouraged me to be strong and independent, to pursue education and career and never settle for less than I deserved. There was an envelope I'd never opened, marked, to be opened on your 35th birthday. He'd turned 35 2 months ago. But with everything happening with work and the kids and Diane moving in, I'd completely forgotten. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside was a letter in my grandmother's elegant handwriting and several legal documents. My dearest Justine, the letter began. By now you've lived enough life to understand what I'm about to tell you. Our family built Riverside Academy in 1896. I had to read the sentence 3 times before it made sense. Sarah, read this. She took the letter and her eyes grew wider with each line. My grandmother, Margaret Eleanor Hartley, had been born Margaret Riverside, part of the founding family of the school where my children were now imprisoned. She'd maintained close ties to the school her entire life and had established a trust fund for its ongoing support and independence. The legal documents made it clear. I was named as the primary trustee and beneficiary of the Hartley Education Trust. The trust was worth $3,700,000. This can't be real, I whispered. Sarah was already on her phone, searching for information about Riverside Academy's founding. Look at this. The school's website mentions the Riverside family as founders. Margaret Riverside married Thomas Hartley in 1943. That's your grandparents. I thought back to everything my grandmother had told me about her life. She'd talked about the importance of education, about building something that lasted, about helping children reach their potential. She'd been a teacher herself, then a principal, then on various educational boards. But she'd never mentioned that her family founded a whole school. There's a letter here from an estate attorney, Sarah said, pulling out another document. Harold Pennington has been trying to reach you. He says he sent letters to your house but never got a response. Diane. She must have intercepted them. Call him, I said. Call him right now. Sarah dialed the number, then handed me the phone. Pennington Estate Law. How may I help you? My name is Justine Pierce. I'm calling about the Hartley Education Trust. There was a pause, then an older man's voice came on the line. Mrs. Pierce, I've been trying to reach you for months. Your grandmother's instructions were very specific about the timing of this transfer. I just found the letter today. Is this real? Do I really control this trust? Absolutely. You're the primary trustee, which means you have full authority over how the trust funds are distributed to Riverside Academy. The school has been receiving annual grants from the trust, but those grants require trustee approval. Your grandmother wanted someone who understood struggle and sacrifice to guide the school's mission. She believed that would be you. My mind was racing. The school doesn't know there's a new trustee. Not yet. Your grandmother passed the trusteeship quietly, intending for you to step into the role when you were ready. There's a board meeting next week. As trustee, you're required to attend. I'll be there, I said. After hanging up, I looked at Sarah. For the first time in days, I felt something besides despair. I felt purpose. Diane sent my kids to a school my grandmother funded, a school where I now control millions of dollars in support. What are you going to do? Sarah asked. I'm going to get my children back. And I'm going to make sure Diane understands exactly what she's done. We spent the next week preparing. Harold Pennington sent me copies of all trust documents, the school's financial statements, and information about the board members. Sarah helped me research guardianship law and gather evidence against Diane. I contacted Mark's employer and learned he was about to be fired for his inappropriate relationship with a subordinate, which violated company policy. I also made some calls to people I knew in Connecticut, old college friends who now lived near Riverside Academy. They helped me quietly observe the school, watch my children from a distance to make sure they were physically safe. The reports broke my heart. Emma was withdrawn, barely eating at meals. Lucas cried himself to sleep most nights. But they were unharmed. And that had to be enough for now. Officer Rodriguez called me, checking in. I told her what I discovered. Document everything, she advised. Build an airtight case. And when you make your move, make it count. The night before the board meeting, I couldn't sleep. I kept reading my grandmother's letter over and over. Real strength isn't about never falling down, she'd written. It's about getting back up with wisdom and grace. I built this school to protect children and give them opportunities. Now I'm trusting you to carry that forward. Be brave, my darling girl. Fight for what matters. I will, Grandma, I whispered to the darkness. I promise. The board meeting was scheduled for 7 o'clock on a Thursday evening. I drove to Connecticut that afternoon, meeting Harold Pennington at his office 2 hours before the meeting. He was a distinguished man in his 70s, with kind eyes and a firm handshake. "Your grandmother would be proud of how you're handling this," he said, looking through the documents I'd compiled. "She always knew you had steel in your spine." "I don't feel very strong right now." "Strength isn't the absence of fear, Mrs. Pierce. It's acting despite it." He briefed me on the board members. There were 9 of them. Headmaster Thompson, 4 community leaders, 2 faculty representatives, 1 student-parent representative, and 1 member appointed by the trust, currently a woman named Adelaide Chen, who had been a close friend of my grandmother's. "Mrs. Chen will be your ally," Harold said. "She's been suspicious of some recent decisions but hasn't had the influence to challenge them. Your arrival will change that dynamic considerably." We arrived at Riverside Academy as the sun was setting. The campus looked even more beautiful in the golden light, and I felt a strange connection to this place my great-great-grandparents had built. They'd imagined a school that would serve generations of children, that would stand for excellence and integrity. Diane had tried to turn it into a weapon. The board meeting was held in a wood-paneled conference room in the main building. Board members were gathering, chatting over coffee and cookies. I hung back, wearing professional clothes and minimal makeup. I'd changed my hair, pulling it back severely, and wore reading glasses I didn't usually use. I wanted to observe before revealing myself. Harold introduced me simply as Miss Hartley, representing the Hartley Education Trust. A few board members glanced at me with polite interest, but most returned to their conversations. Headmaster Thompson welcomed everyone and called the meeting to order. They worked through routine business first. Financial reports showed the school was in good shape, with the trust providing 45% of the operating budget. Enrollment was strong. Faculty retention rates were excellent. Everything looked perfect on paper. Then they reached new business. "We have a proposal for a new staff position," Headmaster Thompson announced. "Please welcome Diane Matthews, who's been volunteering with us and has some thoughts on family support services." Diane walked in, and my heart started pounding. She looked confident and polished, carrying a folder of materials. She smiled at the board members, completely unaware that I was sitting 6 feet away. "Thank you for having me," she said warmly. "I've been working with several families here at Riverside, including my own niece and nephew who recently enrolled. Through that experience, I've identified a gap in our services." She launched into a presentation about the need for a family wellness coordinator, someone who could help families navigate crises and ensure children had stable home environments. She made it sound compassionate and necessary. "I've personally seen how family dysfunction can harm children," she continued. "My own sister-in-law, the mother of my niece and nephew, has been struggling with what I believe are substance abuse and mental health issues. I had to make the difficult decision to remove the children from that environment for their own safety." Several board members nodded sympathetically. "Cases like this are more common than we'd like to admit," Diane went on. "Parents who mean well but can't provide the stability children need. This coordinator position would help identify these situations early and provide intervention and support." She handed out copies of a job description. The position would pay $75,000 annually, plus benefits. The description was clearly written with Diane herself in mind. "Are you proposing yourself for this role?" asked one board member, a businessman named Frank Morrison. "I would certainly be interested," Diane said modestly. "I have personal experience with these difficult situations, and I'm committed to helping children in crisis." I watched her perform, and I had to admire her skill. Shed positioned herself as the hero of her own story, the compassionate aunt rescuing children from a troubled mother. If I didn't know the truth, I might have believed her. "This would require a budget adjustment," Headmaster Thompson said. "We'd need approval from the trust to allocate funds for a new position." Harold Pennington cleared his throat. "Speaking as trustee representative, I'd like to table this discussion pending further investigation of the family situation described." Diane looked mildly annoyed but not worried. "Of course, I understand due diligence is important." Then Adelaide Chen spoke up. She was an elegant woman in her 80s with silver hair and sharp eyes. "Miss Matthews, you mentioned removing your niece and nephew from their mother's care. Did you go through proper legal channels?" "Absolutely. I have temporary guardianship, properly documented and approved by their father. And the mother? How does she feel about this arrangement? Diana's smile tightened slightly. She's struggling to accept it, but it's what's best for the children. I see. Mrs. Chen studied Diane with an expression I couldn't quite read. And these children, Emma and Lucas Pierce, are they adapting well to boarding school? They're adjusting. It takes time, but they're in a stable environment now. Are they? Mrs. Chen pulled out a folder of her own. Because I've spoken with several teachers and staff members, and the reports I'm hearing suggest 2 very unhappy children who cry themselves to sleep and ask for their mother constantly. Dion's composure slipped for just a moment. That's normal adjustment period behavior. Is it? Mrs. Chen looked around the table. I've been involved with this school for 40 years. I knew Margaret Riverside Hartley personally. She founded this institution to help children, not to separate them from loving parents. These reports trouble me deeply. With all due respect, Diane said, recovering her smooth tone. You don't know the full situation. The mother is not fit to care for them currently. Then perhaps we should hear from all parties before making decisions. Mrs. Chen suggested. Including the mother herself. That won't be necessary. Headmaster Thompson interjected. We've reviewed the documentation Miss Matthews provided. It's quite thorough. Documentation can be misleading. Mrs. Chen said quietly. Margaret taught me that. She always said to look beyond the paper to the truth underneath. I decided it was time. I stood up, and several people turned to look at me. If I may, I said, removing my glasses. I'd like to speak to Mrs. Chen's point about truth. Diane glanced at me, then did a double take. Her face went pale. Some of you don't know me, I continued, but Headmaster Thompson does. I'm Justine Pierce. I'm Emma and Lucas' mother. The room erupted in shocked murmurs. Headmaster Thompson half stood from his chair. Mrs. Pierce? You can't be here. This is a private board meeting. Actually, Harold Pennington said calmly, Mrs. Pierce has every right to be here. She's not just a parent. She's also Margaret Hartley's granddaughter and the primary trustee of the Hartley Education Trust. Dead silence fell over the room. Deanne's mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. Her carefully constructed world was crumbling in real time. That's impossible, Headmaster Thompson said weakly. I assure you it's not. Harold distributed copies of the trust documents. Mrs. Pierce inherited trusteeship from her grandmother Margaret, as specified in the trust charter. She has full authority over trust fund distributions to Riverside Academy. I watched Diane's face cycle through shock, disbelief, rage, and finally fear. Shed sent my children to a school funded by my own grandmother's trust, the school where I now held significant financial power. This is some kind of trick, Diane said, her voice shaking. It's not a trick, Mrs. Chen said, a small smile on her face. It's justice. Margaret would have loved this. I turned to face Diane directly. You said I couldn't do anything. You were wrong. For a long moment, nobody spoke. Then Headmaster Thompson found his voice. Mrs. Pierce, even if this is true, it doesn't change the guardianship situation. You still don't have legal authority over the children. Doesn't it? I opened my own folder, the one Sarah and I had spent a week compiling. Let's talk about that guardianship. Diane, you told the board my husband willingly gave you temporary guardianship. What you didn't mention is that you obtained his signature through deception, telling him he was signing emergency contact forms. That's not true, Diane said, but her voice lacked conviction. I have a sworn affidavit from Mark Pierce, stating exactly that. I distributed copies. He admits he was misled about the nature of the documents he signed. Has willing to testify that you manipulated him during a vulnerable time in our marriage. Your marriage was failing because of your neglect. Diane shot back. My marriage was failing because you orchestrated an affair between my husband and your college roommate, Jennifer Walters. I pulled out printed emails. Jennifer was kind enough to confirm that you encouraged the relationship, that you wanted Mark and me to separate. She thought it was just friendly matchmaking. She didn't realize you were systematically destroying my family. More papers distributed around the table. Board members were reading with increasingly disturbed expressions. You told the school I have substance abuse problems. I continued. But all you had were photos of wine bottles in my recycling from monthly book club meetings. You fabricated testimony from neighbors who were actually your friends, people who had never even met me. I have documentation, Diane insisted. You have lies. I looked at Headmaster Thompson. Did you verify any of her claims? Did you call my previous employer, speak to Emma and Lucas, former teachers, contact anyone who actually knew our family? He had the grace to look uncomfortable. Miss Matthews' presentation was very thorough. We had no reason to doubt it. You had every reason to doubt it. She's not a social worker or therapist. She's a recently divorced woman with no professional credentials in family services, who moved into her brother's home and decided to take over his family. I pulled out more documents. Here are letters from Emma and Lucas' former teachers, describing them as happy, well-adjusted children with an involved, caring mother. Here is documentation of my volunteer hours at their previous school. Here are photos from school events, birthday parties, family outings. Here's my employment history showing steady career progression and financial stability. She works too much, Diane said desperately. She's never home. I run a successful financial consulting business, I replied calmly. Yes, I work hard. My grandmother worked hard too, building this very school while raising 3 children. She taught me that being a devoted mother and having a career aren't mutually exclusive. But you've twisted my work ethic into evidence of neglect. Mrs. Chen was reading through my documents carefully. These are very different from what Miss Matthews presented. Headmaster Thompson, did we do proper due diligence before admitting these children? We followed standard procedures, he said defensively. Standard procedures should include verifying claims of parental unfitness before separating children from their mother. Mrs. Chen said sharply, "This is not what Margaret Hartley would have wanted her school used for." My grandmother founded this school to protect children, I said. Not to weaponize education against loving parents. Diane has perverted everything this institution stands for. Diane stood up abruptly. This is ridiculous. You can't just come in here and make accusations. I have legal guardianship. The children are registered under my name. You can't touch them. Actually, Harold Pennington said, the guardianship documents are being challenged in court as we speak. Mr. Pierce has filed to revoke his consent, citing fraud and misrepresentation. Without his support, your guardianship claim is extremely weak, but the 90-day period, Diane stammered, can be terminated immediately if obtained through fraudulent means. Harold finished. We filed the motion this morning. I saw the calculation in Diane's eyes. She was cornered, but she wasn't done fighting yet. Fine, she said, trying to regain her composure. Even if the guardianship is challenged, the children are still enrolled here. They're settled. Moving them mid-year would be disruptive. Any court would prioritize stability. You're right about one thing, I said. Stability matters. That's why I've spent the past week documenting exactly how unstable my children have been since you forced them here. I pulled out my final set of documents. These are reports from teachers and staff, compiled by Mrs. Chen at my request. Emma has stopped participating in class. She barely eats at meals. Lucas cries himself to sleep every night. The night monitor reports he calls for me in his sleep. Both children have asked repeatedly when they can go home, when they can see their mother. That's just adjustment, Diane said weakly. It's trauma, I corrected. Trauma you inflicted on them by ripping them away from their mother and lying to them about why. Did you tell them I didn't want them? Did you say I was sick? What lies did you feed my children, Diane? She didn't answer, and her silence was damning. Frank Morrison, the businessman on the board, spoke up. Miss Matthews, you proposed yourself for a paid position based on your supposed expertise in family crisis intervention. But it appears you created a family crisis rather than resolving one. That's deeply concerning. I was trying to help, Diane said. But even she didn't sound convinced anymore. You were trying to steal my life, I said quietly. You wanted my house, so you manipulated Mark into locking me out. You wanted my husband, so you set up an affair to destroy our marriage. You wanted my children, so you fabricated evidence of my unfitness and sent them away. And you wanted to profit from it by creating a job for yourself based on the lie that you rescued them. That's not, Diane started, but I kept going. Do you know what the worst part is? You almost succeeded. You almost convinced everyone, including me, that I was the problem. You made me question whether I was a good mother. You made my own children think I'd abandoned them. That's not help, Diane. That's cruelty. Mrs. Chen stood up. I move that we immediately revoke Miss Matthews' volunteer privileges and ban her from campus pending full investigation of these allegations. Seconded, said another board member. All in favor? Harold asked. Every hand went up except Diane's and Headmaster Thompson's, who abstained, looking deeply uncomfortable. The motion passes. Mrs. Chen said with satisfaction. Miss Matthews, you need to leave campus immediately. You can't do this, Diane said, but the fight was draining out of her. Those children need me. Those children need their mother, I said, something you tried to take away from them. I also move, Mrs. Chen continued, that we reject the proposed family wellness coordinator position and issue a formal apology to Mrs. Pierce for the school's role in this situation. Another unanimous vote. Diane looked around the table, realizing she'd lost. Her carefully constructed lies had crumbled under the weight of truth. She grabbed her purse and stood. You think you've won, she said to me. You think this fixes everything. But you're still the mother who works too much, who wasn't there for them. That's who you really are, Justine. The words stung because they touched on my deepest insecurity. But this time, I didn't let them break me. I'm the mother who fought for them, I said. I'm the mother who didn't give up when you tried to take everything from me. I'm the mother who will always protect them, even from family members who pretend to care while causing harm. That's who I really am. Diane turned and walked toward the door, but Mrs. Chen stopped her. One more thing, Miss Matthews. We'll be reporting this incident to the appropriate authorities. Fraud, filing false reports, forgery, these are serious crimes. Diane's face went white. You can't prove anything. Actually, I said I can. Officer Patricia Rodriguez of the local police department has been gathering evidence. She's outside right now, waiting to speak with you. And she was. Through the conference room windows, I could see Officer Rodriguez's patrol car in the parking lot. Diane saw it too. This isn't over, she said. But it was. We all knew it was. Security escorted Diane from the building. As she passed me, she hissed, "You'll regret this." "No, Diane," I said calmly. "You will. You tried to take everything from me. Instead, you gave me clarity about what really matters." After she was gone, the room was silent for a moment. Then Headmaster Thompson spoke. "Mrs. Pierce, I owe you an enormous apology. We failed your children and you. We allowed ourselves to be deceived without proper verification. That's inexcusable. You were manipulated by someone skilled at manipulation," I said. "But yes, you should have done better. These are children we're talking about. Their well-being should have been your first priority." "It will be from now on," he promised. "What would you like us to do? I assume you'll be withdrawing Emma and Lucas immediately." I'd thought about this carefully over the past week. Actually, no. I'd like them to stay. Everyone looked surprised. Emma and Lucas loved Riverside Academy before Diane poisoned it for them. I explained. They told me about the art program, the nature trails, the amazing library. This is an excellent school, and it's part of my family's legacy. I don't want Diane's actions to take that away from them too. "But they're so unhappy," Mrs. Chen said gently, "because they thought they'd been abandoned. Once they understand the truth, once they know I fought for them and won, it will be different. I've already arranged to relocate my business here. I found a house 10 minutes from campus. They'll attend as day students. I'll bring them to school each morning and pick them up each afternoon. They'll get the excellent education Riverside offers, and I'll be present in their lives every single day." "That's a big move," Harold said. "My children are worth it. And this way, I can be more involved with the trust and the school." My grandmother wanted someone who understood struggle to guide this institution. "Well, I understand it now." Mrs. Chen smiled. "Margaret would be so proud of you." "There's one more thing," I said. "I'd like to establish a scholarship fund for children of single mothers. and I want to create parent support programs so working parents have resources and community. Diane was wrong about a lot of things, but she was right that some families need support. Let's provide real help, not judgment and separation. The board agreed unanimously. We spent the next hour discussing details, and I felt my grandmother's presence with me, guiding me. As the meeting ended, Mrs. Chen took my hand. Your grandmother talked about you all the time. She said you had strength and integrity. She knew you'd face challenges, and she trusted you'd rise to meet them. She was right. I almost didn't. I admitted. I almost gave up. But you didn't. That's what matters. Outside, Officer Rodriguez was still waiting. She'd taken Diana's statement and had officers ready to investigate the fraud claims. We'd built a solid case. Justice moves slow sometimes, Officer Rodriguez told me. But it moves. You did good, Mrs. Pierce. Call me Justine. And thank you. You helped me when I had nothing. You always had something, she said. You had the truth, and you had love for your kids. That's more than nothing. I drove back to Sarah's apartment that night feeling lighter than I had in weeks. Tomorrow, I'd see Emma and Lucas. Tomorrow, I'd start putting our lives back together. Tomorrow, everything would begin to heal. The next morning, Headmaster Thompson called me before I could call him. Mrs. Pierce. I've spoken with Emma and Lucas this morning. I explained that there had been misunderstandings about their enrollment and that you'd be coming to get them today. Emma burst into tears and asked if it was really true. My own eyes filled with tears. What did you tell her? I told her yes, her mother fought very hard for them, and they'd be going home with you today. Lucas asked if he could bring his butterfly project. I said absolutely. I was at the school within 2 hours. Harold had expedited the guardianship reversal, and I had legal documents restoring my full parental rights. Mark had signed everything without argument. Had also lost his job, as I'd predicted, and was now facing his own reckoning. Mrs. Chen met me at the administration building. They're waiting in the library. I thought it might be better than my office, somewhere that feels less formal. Thank you for everything you've done. I did it for Margaret. And for those children. She squeezed my hand. Go get your babies. I walked across campus with my heart pounding. The library was a beautiful old building with high ceilings and tall windows. Emma and Lucas were sitting on a couch, surrounded by their belongings. They looked so small and lost. Mommy. Emma saw me first. She ran across the room and crashed into me, wrapping her arms around my waist and sobbing. You came back. You came back. I never left, baby. I never left. I held her tight, breathing in the scent of her hair. Lucas was crying too, clutching his butterfly project. Aunt Diane said you were sick. She said you couldn't take care of us anymore. I knelt down so I was at his eye level. Aunt Diane lied about a lot of things. I was never too sick to take care of you. I've been fighting every single day to bring you home. Why did she take us away? Emma asked through her tears. Because she was confused about what was best for you. But she was wrong. And now you're coming home with me. To our real home, Lucas asked. To a new home, actually. We're moving here, to be close to this school. You're going to keep going to Riverside, but as day students. I'll drop you off every morning and pick you up every afternoon. Well, have breakfast together and dinner together, and I'll be at every event and every parent meeting. You'll never have to sleep away from me again unless you choose to. We choose to sleep at home, Emma said immediately. Then that's what we'll do. We gathered their things, and as we walked across campus toward my car, other students and teachers watched. Some smiled. Some looked curious. Emma held my hand tightly, and Lucas carried his butterfly project with fierce pride. Mrs. Chen was waiting by my car. She hugged each of the children. Your great-great-great-grandparents built this school, she told them. Your mother's family has always protected this place and the children here. You come from a long line of strong, brave people. Remember that. Did our mom really fight Aunt Diane? Lucas asked. She did. And she won. Because your mother loves you more than anything in the world. On the drive to our new home, the house I'd rented sight unseen because it was close to the school, Emma and Lucas talked non-stop. They told me about their classes, their teachers, the friends they'd started to make. and they told me how scared they'd been, how much they'd missed me, how they'd cried every night. "I thought you didn't want us anymore," Emma whispered. I pulled the car over because I couldn't see through my tears. I turned around to face them in the back seat. "Listen to me, both of you. There is nothing in this world that could make me not want you. Nothing. You are my heart, my life, my everything. What Aunt Diane did was wrong, and what happened to you was wrong. But it was never because you weren't wanted. You have always been loved. You will always be loved. Do you understand?" They nodded, and we all cried together on the side of the road. Our new house was perfect. It was a small farmhouse with a big yard, 3 bedrooms, and a porch swing. The previous tenants had left it furnished, so we had everything we needed. It arranged for our belongings from Mark's house to be delivered later that week, but for now, we had enough. That first night, we ordered pizza and ate it on the living room floor. We watched Emma's favorite movie. We played with Lucas' butterfly project, setting up a special table for it near the window, and when bedtime came, both children asked if they could sleep in my room, just for tonight. "Just to make sure you're really here, for as many nights as you need," I told them. They fell asleep on either side of me, their breathing eventually syncing up into a peaceful rhythm. I lay awake for a long time, looking at their faces, feeling grateful beyond measure. Over the next few weeks, we established new routines. I set up my home office and restructured my consulting business to work remotely. I could take meetings during school hours and be fully present in the evenings. My clients were understanding, and several even said they respected my decision to prioritize family. Emma and Lucas started therapy with a wonderful counselor named Dr. Patricia Green, who specialized in family trauma. Slowly, they began processing what had happened. They had nightmares sometimes, and moments of anxiety about being separated from me. But they were resilient, and they were healing. Mark came to visit one Saturday, his first time seeing the children since everything had fallen apart. He looked terrible, tired, and ashamed. Emma and Lucas were hesitant at first, but they let him hug them. "I'm sorry," he told them. "I made a really big mistake. I should have protected you and your mom, and I didn't. I'm going to spend the rest of my life making that up to you." "Are you and Mommy getting divorced?" Lucas asked. Mark and I had already discussed this. "Yes," I told them gently. "Your dad and I aren't going to be married anymore. But he'll always be your father, and you'll still see him regularly. Some things are changing, but our love for you never will." It wasn't easy, but it was honest. And Id learned that honesty, even when it's hard, is better than comfortable lies. Diane faced legal consequences. She was convicted of fraud and forgery, served 4 months in jail, and received 2 years of probation. She was also ordered to pay restitution for the legal fees Shed cost us. Mark's parents, Deanne's own parents, were horrified when they learned the truth. They apologized profusely and asked if they could still see their grandchildren. I agreed, because Emma and Lucas loved them, and they'd been deceived just like everyone else. Deanne's friend Jennifer, the woman Mark had the affair with, actually reached out to apologize. She'd been manipulated too, used as a weapon in Deanne's scheme. Mark's relationship with her had ended the day everything came out. He was alone now, which was what he deserved. At Riverside Academy, I became an active board member and trust representative. I worked closely with Mrs. Chen to implement new support programs for families. We created after-school care for working parents, established parent support groups, and developed protocols to ensure no child would ever again be separated from a loving parent without proper investigation. The Scholarship Fund for Children of Single Mothers was named the Margaret Hartley Riverside Scholarship. The first recipients were 3 girls whose mothers worked multiple jobs to support them. At the scholarship ceremony, I told them what my grandmother had taught me, that loving your children and pursuing meaningful work aren't mutually exclusive, that strength sometimes means asking for help, that their mothers were heroes. Emma thrived in the school's drama program. She landed the lead role in the spring play, and I sat in the front row at every rehearsal I could attend. Lucas' butterfly project won first place at the science fair. and he beamed with pride as I took 100 photos. Mrs. Chen and I had tea every Sunday afternoon. She told me stories about my grandmother, helping me understand the legacy I'd inherited. Margaret had been fierce and loving, ambitious and nurturing, exactly like Shed always hoped I'd become. She knew you'd face opposition. Mrs. Chen told me one Sunday. She knew people would judge you for working, for being ambitious, for not fitting into their narrow definition of what a mother should be. That's why she structured the trust the way she did. She wanted you to have power when you needed it most. I wish I could thank her. You do. Every day. By living the life she hoped you'd live. By being the mother and the woman she raised you to be. 6 months after that terrible day when I came home to find my children gone, we were celebrating Emma's 11th birthday. Wed invited her new school friends, and our little farmhouse was filled with laughter and chaos. Lucas was showing the other kids his new butterfly habitat. Emma was opening presents and hugging everyone. And I was in the kitchen, frosting a cake, when Sarah came up beside me. "You did it," she said quietly. "You got them back. You built a new life. You won. We won," I corrected. "I couldn't have done any of this without you." "Yes, you could have. But I'm glad you didn't have to." That evening, after the guests had left and the children were in bed, I sat on the porch swing and looked up at the stars. I thought about everything that had happened, everything I'd lost and everything I'd gained. Diane had tried to destroy me. Shed used my vulnerabilities against me, twisted my strengths into weaknesses, and nearly convinced everyone, including myself, that I was failing as a mother. But Shed been wrong, fighting for my children, refusing to give up even when everything seemed hopeless. That was what real motherhood looked like. Not perfection, but persistence. Not never falling, but always getting back up. My grandmother had known I'd need that lesson. Shed structured her trust to teach me that real power comes from integrity, that real strength comes from love, that real victory comes from fighting for what truly matters. I heard the screen door creak and turned to see Emma standing there in her pajamas. "Can't sleep, sweetie. I just wanted to make sure you were still here." "I'm always here." "Come sit with me." She curled up next to me on the swing, and we rocked gently in the cool evening air. "Mom, do you think Aunt Diane will ever say she's sorry?" I considered the question carefully. Maybe someday. But we don't need her apology to move forward. We have each other, and that's what matters. "I'm glad we moved here," Emma said sleepily. "I like our new house. I like my new friends. And I like that you're always here when I need you." "I'll always be here when you need me," I promised. "Always." She fell asleep against my shoulder, and I held her as the stars came out one by one. Lucas appeared a few minutes later, dragging his blanket, and climbed onto my other side. And there we sat, the three of us together. Finally home. I'm standing in my grandmother's room now, the one I've set up as my home office. Through the window, I can see Emma and Lucas playing in the backyard, chasing fireflies in the gathering dusk. It's a year since that terrible day when I came home to find them gone. And sometimes, it feels like a lifetime ago. And sometimes, it feels like yesterday. The legal proceedings with Mark are finally complete. Our divorce was finalized last month. He has regular visitation with the children, and is working hard to rebuild their trust. He's in therapy, dealing with his guilt and his inability to stand up to his sister. I've forgiven him for their sake, though I'll never forget what his weakness cost us. Diane served her jail time and completed probation. She moved to Oregon and cut contact with everyone in the family. Her parents send cards to Emma and Lucas sometimes, always apologizing, always hoping. The kids appreciate their grandparents' efforts, but they're wary. They learned young that family can hurt you, and trust has to be earned back slowly. Mark's relationship with his parents is strained but healing. They were devastated to learn what their daughter had done, that they'd raised someone capable of such calculated cruelty. They visit once a month, and they've become the kind of grandparents Emma and Lucas need, present and supportive, without overstepping. My consulting business has grown in unexpected ways. Other working mothers started reaching out, asking for my advice not just on finances but on balancing career and family, on fighting for what matters, on refusing to let others define their worth. I've started giving talks at women's business groups and parents' organizations. I tell my story not as a victim but as a survivor, someone who fought back and won. The Hartley Education Trust has expanded its mission. We've established programs at 5 other schools now, always focusing on supporting working parents and ensuring children aren't used as weapons in adult conflicts. Mrs. Chen jokes that my grandmother planned this all along, that she knew I'd turn one school into a movement. Emma is flourishing. She's confident again, her smile reaching her eyes. She joined the debate team, and I've watched her argue passionately about justice and fairness, clearly influenced by our experience. She wants to be a lawyer when she grows up, she tells me. She wants to help families like ours. Lucas has become fascinated with psychology. He reads books about why people hurt each other, trying to understand what happened with Aunt Diane. His therapist, Dr. Green, says it's his way of processing trauma, turning pain into curiosity. He wants to be a therapist himself someday, helping children who've been through difficult situations. I've started dating again, carefully and slowly. There's a man named Andrew who owns a bookstore in town. He's kind and patient, and he understands that my children come first. We've been seeing each other for 3 months, and Emma and Lucas like him. He doesn't try to replace their father. He just shows up, consistently and kindly. Maybe that's all any of us really need. Last week, I took the children to visit my grandmother's grave, for the first time since everything happened. It's a beautiful spot on a hillside overlooking the valley where Riverside Academy sits. Emma brought flowers, Lucas brought a drawing of a butterfly. "Thank you, Grandma," I whispered, kneeling by her headstone. "For everything. For the trust. For the lesson. For believing it'd be strong enough when I needed to be. I understand now what you were teaching me." Emma knelt beside me. "What was she teaching you?" "Mom, that love is worth fighting for. That doing the right thing is more important than doing the easy thing. That real strength isn't about never falling down. It's about getting back up with wisdom and grace. Like you did," Lucas said. "Like all of us did." Together, we sat there for a while, the 3 of us, feeling connected to the generations that came before and the ones that will come after. My grandmother built a school to protect children. I'd fought to protect mine. Emma and Lucas would grow up knowing that love means showing up, fighting back when necessary, and never giving up on what matters most. Tonight, after we got home from the cemetery, I tucked both children into their own beds in their own rooms. They don't need to sleep in my room anymore. They know I'm not going anywhere. "Mom," Emma said as I kissed her goodnight, "I'm proud of you. I'm proud of you too, sweetheart. You've been so brave through all of this. We learned it from you." After they were asleep, I came to my office to write this all down. Not just for me, but for anyone else who might be going through something similar. For any mother who's been told she works too much, loves too little, isn't enough. For anyone who's had their truth twisted by someone else's lies. Here is what I learned, and I want you to understand this deeply. People will try to take what's yours. They'll twist your truth, make you doubt yourself, use your vulnerabilities as weapons against you. They'll exploit your kindness and call your strength a weakness. But your worth isn't determined by their lies. Fight for what matters, but fight smart, not just hard. The truth doesn't need embellishment. It just needs patience and persistence. My grandmother built something beautiful from nothing, despite people doubting her. She taught me that real strength isn't about never falling down. It's about getting back up with wisdom and grace. Diane tried to destroy me, but she gave me something precious instead. She forced me to examine what truly matters. Not the perfect life, but the real one. Not working endless hours to prove something, but being present for moments that count. Not winning every battle, but protecting what's sacred. My children know now that their mother will always fight for them. They know that setbacks aren't endings, just chapters in a longer story. And they know that love, real love, doesn't give up. Sometimes, the people who try to hurt us most give us the greatest gifts. They show us who we really are when everything is stripped away. They force us to find strength we didn't know we had. I'm grateful for my grandmother's legacy, not just the money, but the lesson. Build something that matters. Protect those who can't protect themselves. Never stop fighting for what's right. That's the last laugh, the real victory. Not revenge, but redemption. Not bitterness, but growth. And every morning when I see my children's smiling faces at breakfast, when Emma tells me about her day, and Lucas shows me his latest project, when we sit together at dinner and talk about everything and nothing, I know we won. Not because we destroyed Diane, though she faced consequences for her actions. Not because Mark suffered, though he's dealing with the results of his choices. We won because we're together, because we're healing, because we're building a life based on truth and love, instead of manipulation and lies. We won because we refused to let someone else's cruelty define us. We won because we got back up. Yesterday, Lucas asked me if I was happy. We were working on his homework together, just a normal Tuesday evening, and he looked up from his math problems with those serious eyes of his. "Are you happy, Mom?" Like, really happy. I thought about it honestly. Am I happy? Not in the way I imagined 10 years ago when I married Mark, when I thought I knew what my life would look like. But yes, in a deeper, truer way. Yes, buddy. I'm really happy. Even though Aunt Diane was mean to us, even though you and Dad got divorced, even though all of that, because we made it through together. We're stronger now, and we know what really matters. He nodded, satisfied, and went back to his math. But Emma, who'd been listening from the kitchen, came in and hugged me. "I'm happy too," she whispered. "I didn't think I would be after everything that happened. But I am. That's healing. That's victory. That's what winning really looks like." So to anyone listening to this story, anyone who's facing their own Diane, their own betrayal, their own moment when everything feels lost, don't give up. The truth will out, as my grandmother used to say. Justice might be slow, but it comes. Document everything. Build your case carefully. Find your allies. Remember who you really are, underneath all the lies other people tell about you. And most importantly, keep fighting for what matters. Not with anger or revenge, but with truth and love and persistent, unshakable determination. Your children are watching. Show them what real strength looks like. Show them that mothers can be flawed and human and still be exactly what their children need. Show them that women can work and love and fight and nurture all at once. Show them that falling down isn't failure, staying down is. I look at my grandmother's photo on my desk, the one where she's standing in front of Riverside Academy in 1962, looking fierce and proud. She knew I'd need this lesson someday. She knew life would test me. And she gave me the tools I'd need to survive it. Thank you, Grandma, for the trust, for the legacy, for the lesson. Thank you for teaching me that real power comes from love, that real victory comes from truth, and that real strength comes from getting back up, no matter how many times you fall. I am passing that lesson on to Emma and Lucas now, and someday, when they face their own challenges, their own moments of despair and doubt, they'll remember. They'll remember that their mother fought for them. They'll remember that love wins, truth prevails, and you never ever give up on what matters most. That's my story. That's our victory. And that's the lesson I hope stays with you long after you've finished listening. We didn't just survive. We thrived. And so can you. Now I have a question for you. Have you ever had someone in your life try to take away what mattered most to you? How did you fight back? What lesson did you learn from that experience? Share your story in the comments below. Your experience might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. And if this story resonated with you, if it gave you hope or strength or just made you feel less alone, please hit that like button and subscribe to this channel. Share this story with someone who needs to hear it, someone who's fighting their own battle and needs to know they're not alone. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for being part of this community where we support each other, lift each other up, and remind each other that we're stronger than we know. To everyone out there fighting for what matters, you've got this. Keep going. Your children are watching, and they're learning from you. Show them what real strength looks like. Until next time, hold your loved ones close, fight for what matters, and never forget that you're enough. You've always been enough. Take care of yourselves and each other.